Rananim Kumusta and hello. Welcome back to another episode of Grace Daily, hosted by Grace International Baptist Church here in Chuuk, Micronesia. If you've not yet done so, please like, subscribe, share, become part of this family. If you're listening to this, but you haven't yet visited our church, our services are in English, 9:30 on Sunday mornings, and Chuukese is at 11 o'clock. We'd love to have you come for either of those, both of those. Wednesday evenings are at 6 as well. Love to have you come and join us. For now, we're working our way through our text of the week, Philippians 3, verses 12 through 21, and today we're looking at verses 15 and 19. Let us therefore, as many as be perfect, be thus minded, and if anything ye be otherwise minded, God shall reveal even this unto you. Verse 19. Talking about the enemies of the cross of Christ, it says, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who mind earthly things. When I was in 8th or 9th grade and living in Hawaii, I had to take a Hawaiian history class. And in this class, we had to prepare a group project in which we had to pretend to be voyagers, and there were certain requirements we had to do. And anyway, my group is pretty horrible. I was stuck with two girls that I did not get along with, and they will remain nameless just in case. But I did not get along with them very well at all. And one wanted to make this group. Remember, I'm in 8th or 9th grade here. One wanted to make, on the ship, there's a bunch of drama with one boy liked a girl and all of this. And needless to say, we were not on the same page. We were not thinking the same way as each other. We were not heading in the same direction in our thought process. And I was very glad when the project was over. So thinking in a certain way is vital to our Christian lives. And here we are back with our old familiar word. Okay, we've talked about this one before, phronete. Remember, this is the word that Paul uses 10 times in Philippians alone, and it carries the idea of to think or to be wise. So remember, Paul is talking to, quote, as many as be mature, okay, right? As many as are perfect or complete, right? You mature believers. When he tells us to think a certain way, he uses this type of verb that's called a subjunctive mood. Okay, it's a verb that's in the subjunctive mood. So he says, as many as you be perfect, you should think in this way. It's kind of a literal way to translate that. And so the subjunctive mood, for those of you that speak Chuukese, it would be like our pwap, right? It would be like our sipwap or upwap, right? It's that verb of possibility or intention. And so he's saying, hey, to all of us that are mature in Christ, we ought to be thinking like this. Well, what does he mean? What should we be thinking about? And I think it refers back to, I'm sure it refers back to verses 12 through 15. Our mindset should be that because I love God so much, I will press towards the mark and seek to attain the prize. And I will do so until the end of my days. And if you are a mature believer, this is where your mind ought to be. I am going to keep going. But then Paul says, but if we're thinking in a different way than this, God will let you know. And I personally, when I look at that side of the verse, and it's a little bit wordy from the text that we're using, but I find that a huge comfort. Because it takes the pressure of me having to shoulder the burden off. So let me put it to you this way. Are you breathing right now? Okay, maybe I paused, maybe you thought about it, maybe you took a deep breath because you hadn't been thinking about breathing, and then I mentioned it, and then you were like, oh yeah, I'm breathing right now, right? Your brain has been doing it all for you in the background. And as we grow and mature in Christ, more and more our natural mindset will be to press towards Him. Now, it doesn't become automatic where we sit back and we don't do anything. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it becomes more natural where we are constantly simply pressing towards Christ and the prize. But if I forget that, if I put my mind elsewhere, God will remind me. It's very rare that somebody can actually hold their breath until they pass out. But then even if you do pass out, right, if you hold it as long as you can and you pass out, pretty much immediately you'll start to breathe again after you pass out, because your brain will kick back in. And that's what God does for us. Sometimes we're going along life, we're pressing toward the mark, and then we get distracted, we get tired, we get worn out, we're not thinking about Him. And what's the promise? Well, God will put our minds back right. God will help us to think about it correctly again. But Paul also warns us down in verses 18 and 19 about the enemies of the cross of Christ. And the final thought about them is this. It says that they think about earthly things. Now I get it. I don't usually walk around through Shigeto, right? And thinking about how like every step I take with the cart that's burdened down with my my chicken quarters and my bag of rice. It's like pushing my burden through life, and I too am going to spiritually walk toward the prize. I get that. Like, that's not our mindset. And that's not exactly what Paul is talking about here. I think when we kind of zoom out, we look at it from a broader picture, we can simply ask this question when it comes down to thinking in this way, right? What do I gear my days towards? What am I oriented around? Am I oriented around the race, or am I oriented around the comfort of life? We've been commanded to think in some very distinctly Christian ways. In Philippians 2:2, okay, we've looked at this word phronete a few times now. We're told to think like one another, to be like-minded in the cause of Christ. In Philippians 2:5, we're told to think like Christ. And now in Philippians 3:15, we're told to think towards the end of the race, or else, according to verse 19, if our thoughts are only on earthly things, we're actually acting like the enemies of the cross. And so what are you thinking about today? How can we orient our days around pressing towards Christ? That's something that we all have to pray through, think about, plan. But begin today. How can you orient today around Christ? Grace and peace, my friends.